and this here may be tough to you. Snack cake to me, yeah, more hostess. This been overdue forever. Asked me when it was dropping, said never. Should've made you cut the feta, but I designed it Freemason Margiela.
What's good, Shellitronnn here, the most smoke, no joking. I'm back out again with a brand new video, and I'm gonna keep it a bold braid biscuit. I know I said I was gonna do this video a long time ago. This is a little bit late, talking about which free agent wide receiver I think is best suited to play for the Panthers next year. And I'm so high on this pickup for a number of reasons, not just because of the player himself, but also because picking up a guy in free agency might just open up what the team can do in the draft. I mean, you may have to pay him a little bit more than you have to pay a rookie receiver, but thinking about where exactly the team will be drafting for a receiver this year, that particular draft pick may be a little bit more valuable than the player itself. I think the team probably wouldn't go for a receiver until the third round, potentially. And either one of those third round picks could be used to possibly trade up or down in the draft. I don't think I see the team holding on to all 7 of their picks this year. I just think the team's going to try to go up or down to either get more assets or try to sneak up ahead and try to pick up an asset that's a little bit better that won't fall to where we're going to be drafting around the third round. Maybe even the second round. I might do a whole different video on that when I go to my mock draft video I'm going to do sometime this week. We'll get to that later. So let's stay focused here. The guy I think that the Panthers should try to target in free agency is Tyrell Williams. And I think I've hinted at this a couple times before, either in the comments or maybe even in a video. But Tyrell Williams, before you even get to his stats, his body type, I think, is the perfect fit for our offense. And that's with the assumption that Norv Turner doesn't want to run his offense with all guys with the same kind of body type, the same kind of game type. You know, all guys who are like DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Jarius Wright, you know, guys who are like 5'10", 5'11", maybe even 6 foot, who are all speed guys, who are all guys who can route you up, that kind of thing. If he's not looking for a big body X-type receiver who can go up and high point, a guy who can go into the red zone, a guy who can run fades and back corner, front corner of the end zone kind of plays where you just throw it up to him and you just know he's going to be the guy who's going to get it above the rim. If they're not looking for that kind of guy, then you know this is kind of pointless. But I'm going to run with the assumption that the team does want that because honestly, I think that's the best way to make sure that these other guys like DJ, like Curtis, like Jarius, like Ian Thomas and Greg Olsen, like Christian McCaffrey, we can make sure those guys are always single covered, especially in the red zone. There's just way too many options on the team, and you have to make the defense decide who they're going to focus on. You might, as a defensive coordinator, be more tempted to focus your attention on that guy, thus leaving all our other weapons open. And then you have to, you know, keep in mind that we have Cam Newton as well, which takes away another coverage threat. So Tyrell Williams at 6'4", 205, having run a 4.43 40. When you look at his stats over the years, he's only gotten better. Now I know his yards have gone down. His second year in the league, he had a 1,000-yard season. At his third year, he had 700. And just this past year, he had 653. You could be thinking to yourself, wait, he went from having 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns to 700 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then this past year, 650 and only 5 touchdowns. How's he getting better? There's 2 things to look at here. His catch percentage always going up from 58 to 62 to 63%. And the second thing is the context of the scheme he played in this past year. And honestly, that is the most important thing to pay attention to when you're looking at his stats and saying, wait, is this guy actually worth it? I mean, this guy had just marginally better numbers than Devin Funchess. Still better than Devin Funchess, but just marginally so, maybe 100 more yards, maybe a few less catches. Like, why do we need Tyrell Williams? What is he going to bring? Look at what he was going up against. Tyrell, as you just saw, had 41 catches on 65 targets this year, 650 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Okay, let's look at his teammates, though. Melvin Gordon, 50 receptions on 66 targets, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's a running back. And even the backup running back, Austin Eckler, had 39 receptions on 53 targets, 400 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's 7 touchdowns and almost 900 yards in receptions between your 2 running backs alone. Let's not even forget that in that scheme, both these 2 running backs had over 500 yards. Eckler had 550 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Melvin Gordon almost had 900 yards on the ground and 10 touchdowns. So even when they weren't getting receptions, they were still taking away potential touches from the receivers on the team and doing it pretty well. Then you get down the list here, you look at Keenan Allen, who had 97 receptions on 136 targets, 1,200 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Go down a little bit more to their kind of swing guy, Mike Williams, who had 43 receptions on 66 targets, 664 yards, 10 touchdowns. I mean, there's just guys up and down this list. You can get down to even Antonio Gates, who had 28 receptions on 45 targets and 2 touchdowns. There were so many different guys on this team producing that only one guy really had a shining year. But even with his almost 100 receptions and 1,200 yards receiving, he only got 6 touchdowns. Mike Williams, who basically had the same kind of stats as Tyrell Williams, had 10 touchdowns last year. So you have to understand that in the context of the scheme he was in last year, He wasn't really going to have a breakout, huge, blockbuster kind of stat year, but he was still very productive in an offense that spread the ball around and had good running back play. And what team does that description remind you of? Maybe the Panthers? Tyrell Williams coming to this scheme will help us out a lot, not just with him getting his own production, but like I said earlier, with him spreading out the field for other guys. With him on the field, you have to be looking for him. Now, obviously, early on in his career, he had the case of the dropsies. I ain't going to front on you. The dude was dropping passes. It was not all that great. But just this past year, he was in the top 5, I think, in catching passes with the defender within 1 or 2 yards of him. So he's gotten a lot better with his catching. He's gotten a lot better with his route running. I think he's matured and learned a lot. And this 5th season in the league is really going to be a breakout year for him. The only problem with this is we're not the only team in the league that needs a receiver. There are other teams in the league that need receivers. The Niners need a guy. The Raiders need a guy. Even the Patriots could use a guy, but he doesn't really fit their mold of receivers, if you smell what I'm getting at here. But that's only the first part of the problem. Looking at the way that these receivers have been getting paid the past couple years, the receiver market is crazy inflated. There are guys who are a lot worse than Tyrell Williams getting paid the big bucks, going upwards. Guys like Paul Richardson and like Albert Wilson are getting $8 million a year. Looking at guys like Marquise Lee getting $8.5 million a year. Moncrief got 9.6. Looking at Randall Cobb, who got $10 million a year. I really do believe that Tyrell Williams has a higher ceiling than all of those guys. So he has the negotiating power to maybe demand around 9, 10, maybe even $11 million a year. And that's honestly before a potential bidding war. And there's just no way that the Panthers with our cap space are going to win a bidding war against the Raiders. Now, according to SpotRack, the team has about $11 million in cap space. But they also estimate the team's going to have about $15 million once March 13th or 14th happens. And it's only the top 51 in cap space. But I think they're working with the assumption that the team keeps Torrey Smith, who has a $5 million contract on the line this season. And if we do cut him, there's no dead cap this season. So for this video, I'm going to work with the assumption the team has $20 million in cap space next year. And honestly, that might just be enough to actually pick up Tyrell Williams. And let's say the man wants $11 million a year. Okay, so $11 million a year sounds like a lot. But when you take into account that there's $5 million off the cap with Torrey Smith being gone, that's only $6 million in replacement cap space for Tyrell Williams. Then we also consider we don't have Devin Funchess anymore, who probably would have demanded about $8 or $9 million a year, but just last year was making about $600,000. We'll consider that in there and say it's only about $5.5 million in adjusted kind of cap space for this upcoming season. We can probably do that and maybe even front load the majority of that money so it hits in the first couple years of his contract, because we have to recognize that in 2020, there's going to be a lot of guys that are looking to get paid, because we have to recognize that in 2020, next year, because we have to recognize that in 2020, next offseason, there's going to be a few important pieces on the team. Guys like Shaq Thompson, guys like Mario Addison, maybe even Greg Van Roten, and especially James Bradbury. Each of those guys are probably deserving of getting an extension on their contract. Now, Mario Addison is on the iffy list for me. He's had some really great years for us. I will not deny that. But we also can't deny that paying a defensive end gets really expensive. Our secondary might be getting a lot better and a lot stronger here in the next couple of years. Good coverage can cause sacks, and good pressure can cause interceptions, and good passes defended and that kind of stuff. So I think that with our secondary getting a lot better, we may be able to get away with not picking up Mario Addison in 2020, drafting another edge guy to go along with the edge guy we pick up this season. And with 2 good edge rushers and a good secondary, our defense could be straight without having to pay the big bucks to Mario Addison, and that really could open up the team to have the cap space to actually pick up Tyrell Williams. I mean, maybe the team could backload the contract. But either way you split it, I think that Tyrell Williams is easily the best choice for the Panthers right now. And honestly, I'm only going off of what Ron Rivera said in that interview on First Take, and he said it in a couple other places. His main focuses this offseason is protecting Cam and getting Cam more weapons. And the first point is easy. Obviously, protecting Cam means getting linemen. But getting Cam more weapons, what does that even entail? We have one of the best running backs in the game already. I think we're pretty straight at tight end. This is probably going to be Greg's last year, but Ian Thomas looks very promising. And, I mean, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Jarius Wright, I think all 3 of those guys are definitely going to be guys who are going to have really good production next year and even in 2020 if we do pick up Jarius Wright's option for 2020, which I have no idea why we wouldn't. So that leaves me with an educated guess that more weapons for Cam means a wide receiver. And we're going to only get that in free agency and the draft, obviously, which leads me back to my point I was making earlier about the draft. The team probably is not going to pick up a wide receiver any earlier than the 3rd round. The team is probably not going to pick up a wide receiver any earlier than the 3rd round, looking at probably O-line and D-line for our first 3 picks. Let's be realistic here. If anything, with that 77th pick in the draft, I would see us maybe picking up a free safety, possibly. But other than that, I really don't see us picking up a receiver very early in the draft. But like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of trade value with either one of those third-round picks that I really believe the team is going to have to pull the trigger on. I think the team's going to either go and try to double down on getting some good depth pieces in the 4th round, or possibly try to trade up and get an earlier pick in the 3rd, or maybe even try to get a very, very, very early pick in the 2nd, using our 2nd round pick and the number 77 pick. It may take a 2nd round pick, the 3rd, and a 6th, maybe a 2nd, 3rd, and a 5th to go up that high, but I would not rule it out. And that remains to be seen. I'm still convinced that Tyrell Williams is the best pickup right now for the team. In free agency, we might be able to get anything else in the draft, like an edge rusher, O-lineman, that kind of stuff. But picking up a receiver here in free agency could really help out the team, and Tyrell Williams seems to be the best fit of any of the guys that I see. But what are your thoughts? Who are you guys thinking about picking up in the free agency? Do you like Tyrell Williams? Do you not like Tyrell Williams? I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on what the team should be doing in the draft and free agency as it pertains to wide receiver and even trading up or down with those picks? Do you think the team just keeps all their picks and just goes straight through with all 7? Are you even convinced the team would even trade any of those picks? Let me know in the comments below. And you already know to do with that like button.
Cheers to you, appreciate the chance. Being told y'all I been the man. Being told y'all I had the gift. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Real ones gonna recommend. Count this as another win.